Nobody understands. Nobody gets it. Nobody understands. Nobody gets it. And nobody would understand. Nobody would get it unless they've been through it. Unless they have been through it. Sure, there's people out there who've never ever been through it themselves, but they may have had friends or family who've gone through it and they think they understand. But you don't really understand, folks. You don't really get it completely unless you've gone through it yourself. I'm talking about depression. I'm talking about mental health problems. I'm not saying mental health issues. Notice that? I'm saying mental health problems. Because mental health, even though it's a big issue right now, it's not an issue that you have. It's a problem you have that needs to be looked at. Mental health, big problem. It's a big problem right now. Folks, there's so many people out there who have unfortunately have taken their own life because of mental health problems. And that's very, very unfortunate. That these people felt their only way out was to take their life. This is not a normal video for me, folks. It's a video you very rarely see me do. And there's so many people have died over the years, folks, from either severe depression, mental health problems, people who've been bullied and weren't able to handle it and took their own life because of it. There's people who've died from very, very unfortunate sicknesses like cancer. My loved ones died from cancer. My mom, my brother. And I know what that's like. I know what that pain is like, losing a loved one. I've been through it all, folks. Mental health, depression. Folks, I've been through it. I've lived through it. I'm coming out in this video to finally tell you all, yes, over the years, I've been battling my own demons when it comes to depression. I've been battling mental health issues, anxiety, all these things, folks. My anxiety, folks, that's how it all started. Anxiety and depression. And it all started, folks, about 10 years ago, 2012. 2012 is when it all really, probably 2011, but mostly through 2012 is when it all started for me, folks. I began to notice, little things like whenever I'd go to see my friends playing in a band gig. They were in a band. I'd go to see them, and I'd begin to notice, folks, that through the night, all through the night, I'd kind of be doing this weird thing with my mouth, like all this stuff, and with my tongue, and I knew something wasn't right. Back then, folks, I knew something wasn't right, and I couldn't put my finger on it. I couldn't pinpoint to what exactly was wrong back then because it was all new for me. I mean, I've kind of been depressed all my life, really, folks, but it was all kind of new for me, really, back in 2012. It's when it all, I was fully grown up, and it really all began back then, folks. And it began with anxiety like that, and I was so fidgety and, touching my mouth and all this stuff. And I knew something wasn't right. And my friend, she was in a band at the time. I'd go to see her play, and she knew by looking at me something wasn't right too, but she never really said anything to me about it. But I know she noticed it. And then, as time went on, folks, it began to move to depression. I began to feel depressed. And in 2012 is when it all began to change for me because my mom was very sick too at the time, folks. She's since, as you know, passed away. But she was very sick at the time in 2012, and I guess that all got to me as well. Um, she she was in hospital, and we were called in one morning, very very early, all all of us as a family, because she was let's just say she took a turn for the worst. Um, she was put into ICU, into intensive care. Um, it's all kind of a blur, but I still have a picture of it, folks, in my head. And she was really sick. They gave her a couple of hours, but thankfully she pulled through because she's a fighter. She pulled through, and she came out of it, and she was, she was in guess you could say not a coma, but well, yeah, I guess they were giving her a couple of hours, but the doctor was giving her a couple of hours, but she pulled through it all. But while my mother, while my mother was was in a coma, she we were all told to go home, folks, basically that night. I left the hospital. I left the hospital. I came home. I went out to the karaoke that night to see a certain lady who I used to go see all the time and support her and stuff, and I thought we were friends. That night, this lady knew something wasn't right about me, so I told her. She called me up to sing, and I told her, and because she knew something wasn't right, I told her everything. This friend of mine, and later that night, folks, something happened. Later that night, something happened, folks, in the bar, and when it happened, I didn't really believe it happened. You know, the bar was clearing out, and everybody was going home. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning, I guess, and it was about 1 a.m. in the morning, and everybody was going home, and I was sitting at the bar counter, talking away to this lady. You know, we'd always have little talks after the night of karaoke, whatever. I was talking to her, and she, her husband, went to the bathroom, the restroom, and um, the barman. There was nobody in the bar at this point now. There was no customers, nothing. And folks, keep in mind this is long before CCTV cameras. There was nobody in the bar. The barman went out the back somewhere to go do something. I don't know. He went into another part of the bar to clean up and stuff. Her husband went to the restroom, and that's when it happened, folks. She took advantage of me. My friend took advantage of me, this married woman. And it still to this day disgusts me that she did this, because I can't get it out of my head to this day. 10 years on, I'm scarred by this still. Um, she she waited for her moment. She began to touch me, rubbing my arm, saying, "Oh, it's going to be okay. Your mom will be okay. It's going to be okay." She slowly, folks, took her hand and started rubbing further down to an area I didn't want her touching. And you all know what that is. I don't need to go into it. Anyhow, her husband came out of the restroom. She saw him come out, and she pulled her hand away like that. And she looked at me and she said, "Say nothing, say nothing." Folks, I didn't know it had happened at the time until I got home later on that night, and it hit me just, like that she did that. I was in shock. Anyhow, my mom survived, and she pulled through for another year. And a year later, she died. That's when it all began to happen and go downhill after that, folks. My depression, my mental health, it all began to go for me. And then, folks, in 2019, we're fast forwarding now. 2019, it all changed for me. It began to change, I think, folks, from 2018, really. I began to notice little things. But 2019, folks, I did something I shouldn't have done. I attempted to take my own life. I did. August 2019. I began to take my own life. I attempted, to take my own life, and prior to that, folks, I began to hear things, in my head, and I began to hear voices, folks, screaming at me and just going through my head. I began to hear my mom's voice then. I began to hear my brother's voice. My mom and brother at this point, folks, had passed on a couple of years prior to that, and I began to hear their voice because prior to that, folks, I had been to the graveyard quite a lot, folks. I was going out there almost every single day. Almost every single day I was going to the graveyard. And I began to hear their voices talking to me, folks, and I know it wasn't real, folks. I know that now it wasn't real. But I could hear them loud and clear. And they were saying, "Come up here to us, Dave, come up here to us," like as if they were calling me up to heaven. "Come up here to us, come up here to us." And folks, those messages, "come up here to us," just kept going over and over again and again and again in my head. Like it was like, folks, when you replay like a CD or a song on YouTube or whatever, and you hear the same thing over and over again, don't you? That's what it was like, folks. "Come up here to us, come up here to us." It was the scariest thing, folks, that I went through. And I don't wish that on anybody out there, not even my enemies, not even my worst enemies. I wish it on none of you to go through that. None of you. And I hope it never, ever happens to any of you. But folks, I, at that point, couldn't take any more. I attempted to take my own life. I think about August the 9th or something. August the 9th, I think, 2019. And again, because I wasn't taken seriously the first time by the hospital, I began to take my own life. I attempted to take my own life again, folks, for a second time. Not once, twice. So I began to take. I attempted, sorry. Don't know why I keep saying began. I attempted to take my own life again, folks, for a second time, because I couldn't take any more. I felt like There was nobody there for me. I felt like I couldn't talk to anybody. I felt like I couldn't get any. I knew there was professional help available, but I felt like nobody cared. You get into this place, folks, where you feel there's no other option but suicide. And that's why I mentioned earlier, folks, in this video, that people have taken their own life before because they felt there was no other option. And I now know, folks, what they have gone through. Those people who have now passed on from suicide. I know what they went through. The exact same thing I went through. The exact same thing I went through. The bullying. The bullying and the feeling nobody loves you, nobody cares about you. That's what they told themselves in here. All those people who have taken their own lives over the years, folks, that's what they told themselves in here. Nobody loves me, nobody cares about me. That's what their mind told them. And that's why I say, folks, unless you've been through this, unless you've gone through this, you won't understand fully what it's like. I'm not saying you don't understand if you've had friends or family who've gone through it. That's not what I'm saying. You may have some idea about what they went through, but unless you've gone through it fully yourself, you won't understand what it's really like. How scary it is, how lonely it can be, how lonely depression can be, folks, for many people, how lonely mental health can be for many people, anxiety, how bad it can be for many people. For me, folks, I couldn't stop touching my mouth, I couldn't stop touching sticking my tongue in and out and, going crazy and panicking in front of crowds of people in a bar. I couldn't stop, folks. I was like all those people who took their own lives over the years, folks. I've lived it now. I've gone through it. And I wanted to do this video, folks, because there's many people on Facebook who don't understand why I react so badly to laughing reactions under my posts on Facebook, laughing emojis. I react badly, folks, to it because I feel like you're attacking me. Because my depression, my mental health, folks, still exists right in here. And in here, folks, it tells me this right in here. My mind says, Dave, they're attacking you. Thank you for watching this video, folks. Thank you all for watching this, folks. The story I told you about that lady taking advantage of me was 100% true for me. I know she did it, and she knows she did it. But I've moved past that, folks, because I want to move on from that, because I've other things going on in my mind these days, and I don't have time for that. I know she did it. She knows she did it. That's all that needs to be said on that. Do I forgive her? I don't know. Up to this day, folks, she will still tell people that I'm lying about it, that I'm slandering her name. She'll probably even say that now. But I haven't mentioned her name. That's the thing. But she knows who she is. Anyway, forget about that. I want to thank you all for watching this, folks. This very long video, nearly 26 minutes long. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all now understand or have some idea of what I've gone through, what I've been through, and how I feel sometimes. Thank you, folks.